I am Colin Greenwood from the band Radiohead, and I'm going to be your host for the next couple of hours. Today feels like it's going to be a really special show. I'm going to share with you a really special part of my life this year, time spent in South Africa, listening to and enjoying South African music. This year, I've really fallen in love with the culture, the people, and the landscape. So on today's Sunday service, every tune comes from South Africa, the Rainbow Nation. This is going to be the sounds of South Africa on 6. As well as playing bass with the other guys in the head, I'm also the global ambassador for the Children's Radio Foundation, which is a charity that uses radio as a tool to give young people in South Africa and elsewhere in Africa a platform to say the things they want to say about their lives. Just by giving a kid a microphone, Children's Radio Foundation inspires talk, dialogue and change. It's wicked, and it's the reason that got me into South African music. So we've just heard the Dark City Sisters and the Flying Jazz Queens, and that song was called Tomati Yo-Yo No. 3. The name of the band, Dark City Sisters, comes from the Alexandra Township, which is just outside Johannesburg, so-called Dark City because they didn't have any lighting there for security. And we're going to be hearing a bit later from the former BBC correspondent in South Africa in the 90s, Jeremy Vine, who's kind enough to share some of his memories of his time when he was in South Africa. From 1976, and you'll have to be patient whilst I pronounce this right, this is the fabulous Dick Xhosa with Chapita, as performed by the Pelican Clubhouse Band. Chapita by Dick Xhosa from the excellent Strut Records Next Stop Soweto compilation. The song comes from the second volume and features a top selection of 70s psych rock, garage and soul funk from South Africa. Over the next 2 hours, I'm going to be playing a selection of my favourite South African tracks from the 40s till now, the special sounds of South Africa on 6. My love affair with South African music started during my trip to South Africa in January this year. I visited a bunch of radio stations making brilliant programmes with kids. It's all part of the work of the Children's Radio Foundation. I'm proud to be involved in their work and to help bring the fantastic shows the kids have made to wider attention. In South Africa, I met a load of amazing young people, united by the power of radio as a tool to empower. I even found myself being questioned, interviewed by a group of kids, some as young as 5, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever done. So that was me being interviewed by the kids from the Manenberg Community Centre, which is a township just outside Cape Town. So we're going to be hearing some more interviews from the children later, and you can check out all the different radio clips and stories on the childrensradiofoundation.org website, as well as a link on radiohead.com. And this, from the Queen of Soul, is an artist who we'll hear more of later this afternoon. It's What's Wrong with Grooving by Letta Mbulu. Born in South Africa, though she left for a period of her career due to the apartheid state, it's the wonderful Letta Mbulu with a tune that later became an acid jazz classic in the 90s UK scene, What Is Wrong with Grooving. She's got an incredible voice, and we're going to play a couple more tunes with Letta later. Let's play a track from another woman to be reckoned with, Brenda Fassie, the queen of African pop, the Madonna of the township. Coming up after this, it's Kula.
Hello, I'm C60.
That was Brenda Fassie with the song Kula from the excellent Earthworks compilation of Kwaito music, which is a kind of special mix of house and hip-hop from early 90s South Africa. I love this track, and I love her lazily urgent voice on it. The way the music reminds me of some of my favourite Chicago, Detroit music from the early American house stuff by artists like Jamie Principle and Frankie Knuckles. It's a fantastic track. But what kind of music makes sense to young people today in South Africa? Let's listen to another clip recorded by the Children's Radio Foundation. So the Children's Radio Foundation is celebrating their 5th anniversary this year, and it's great to be able to put out some radio broadcasts with 6 music on the sounds of South Africa. Thanks to Jay Emery for putting that together. The Manhattan Brothers started playing in South Africa in the 40s and 50s. They were a close harmony group inspired partly by African-American artists like the Ink Spots. My brother Johnny's a big fan of the Ink Spots too, so much so that we use their harmonies as coming on music for our own gigs. That song was called Laku Shoni Langa by the wonderful Manhattan Brothers, lilting and classic, two of my favourite things. There are 11 official languages in South Africa, and that version was in Xhosa. But the band actually re-recorded this song with English lyrics for Decca, New York, and then it was called Lovely Lies. It went on to become the first South African recording to break into the Billboard Top 100 at number 46 in 1956. It's funny because my friends in South Africa tell me that the direct translation of Laku Shoni Langa means the sun will set, so I'm not sure what's going on there. The Nzimande All-Stars were named after star producer Hamilton Nzimande. I'm going to play a tune by him called Side by Side, as I love the disco Hammond stomp on it. The band also recorded the top Afro disco track Highway Sporro Disco, recently released by Sofrito Records, and I know that Giles Peterson's been playing it out on his show on Six Music. They're both great tunes, but we're going to listen now to Side by Side. So that was the seriously groovy Nzimande All-Stars, the ultimate producers band with Side by Side. I've loved playing a bunch of tracks over these Sunday services that's broken some of our producer Nigel's recording rules, which is no sax and no Hammond, and sometimes even no bass. Anyway, the Nzimande All-Stars are all over it with this track, Side by Side. It's fantastic, it's cool, and now it's the Six Music News. Welcome back, I'm Colin Greenwood and you're listening to The Sounds of South Africa on Six Music. That was Chico, aka Sela Twala, with his track Mujaji. Chico is an artist and producer who has spent his career breathing life into the cultural scene in South Africa. Born in 1963, Chico's dad ran an illegal club or shebeen in Soweto. Chico originally planned to be a traffic cop, but then wisely plumped for a career in disco. He's a producer, performer and top percussionist. He actually helped make a lot of the Brenda Fassie tunes in her later years, notably her comeback album called Mameza. The track I just played, Mujaji, is the name for the Rain Queen of Limpopo province in South Africa. The Rain Queens are supposed to have special powers to summon up the clouds and make the rain fall. There's currently no Rain Queen, the last one died in 2005. Still, she lives on in this fantastic song. I met a lot of great South Africa artists when I was out there this year. South African music is really strong and several artists, such as the Blackjacks and most recently Petite Noir, have broken into the UK and elsewhere over the years. But having gone to South Africa and visited a load of young people with the Children's Radio Foundation, I was really interested to know what they were listening to in South Africa, international artists or homegrown South African talent.
Six Music.
This is Colin Greenwood.
International.
My name is Colin Greenwood from the band Radiohead, and you are listening to the Sunday service on Six Music. It was great to do the first show on Six Music with my brother and Adam, and we had a top time putting that together. I loved listening back to the tunes that Johnny and I grew up with. It was fantastic. So speaking of brothers, here's another band of brothers, and it's the Flames. Steve Fattar played with the group on guitar, and Idris Fattar was on bass, as well as brother Ricky, who went on to play with Ruttles and Beach Boys. That was the Flames on Six Music with their cover of If You Think You're Groovy. I love psych music like that, West Coast 60s psych stuff. I love how it kicks off and explodes with all the horns, sitar, and it's fantastic drums. It's a brilliant track. The music of both the next two tracks is by Hugh Masekela, and they were recorded in America with some of the amazing players from the Jackson 5 records. And also both tunes feature the incredible vocals of Letta Mbula. One of the great things about making this show was discovering all these amazing women vocalists who are the heart and soul of this programme. First up, Mkongo. Part by Hugh Masekela kept those two gems hidden away for far too long. You just heard Makhlelela and before that Mkongo, both by Hugh Masekela and both with Letta Mbula on vocals. Sandwiched in between those two top tunes was a sound from the street. As well as the classics we've been enjoying today, it's been really cool to learn about newer South African music. One of the great, more recent tracks that I've been listening to is from the Ayabanes House compilation. This next tune, Wena, by DJ Something Black, featuring the vocals and Siki Matsuai, was released in 2010 on Out Here Records.
Wena,
That was DJ Something Black with Wayna featuring Ntsiki Mazwai. In just a moment, we're going to hear from a young group of singers who I met in Cape Town called Music Sensation. But before that, let's play another sensational act. This is a very cool record because it comes as a hot recommendation from the Shangan producer called Richard Nozinja Metetwa. Richard Nozinja has been touring the UK and Europe and has just done some dance workshops and performances. You can check out a great set of Shangan music he did on the SoundCloud for Rinse FM. This track, Mana Dance, reminds me of something that Jay Dilla might make. It's big, heavy, and there's lots of bass, which I obviously like. Makeba with Mana Dance after this.
BBC Radio.
That was Mana Dance by Makeba. Let's play another piece made by the Children's Radio Foundation. The a cappella group Music Sensation are from a township on the edge of Cape Town called Kailicha, which I visited. The band find joy and support through singing and sharing songs with friends and family, and I actually got to hang out with them after their brilliant set. This is a really special moment for me. I'm playing 2 hours of great South African music on a radio station I love, the Sounds of South Africa on 6. In just a moment, I'm going to be talking to Jeremy Vine about his time as a correspondent in South Africa. But now we're going to listen to a track put out by a friend of mine, Dan, aka Caribou. This is Heke Heke by Shangan artist Songa Dance. You're listening to The Sounds of South Africa on 6 Music, and that was Hiki Hiki by Songa Dance. And now I'd like to welcome to the studio Jeremy Vine.
Thanks, Colin, thanks.
So you were the BBC correspondent in South Africa mid-90s.
Yeah, I actually went to South Africa after the 97 election because Labour had this massive victory and I thought that there might not be that much politics at Westminster.
Yeah.
And the BBC, bless it, said, well, why don't you become Africa correspondent, which is about as far as possible from doing Westminster. And I suddenly realised when I went there, oh my goodness, this is what news is. It's not politicians putting out press releases, it's real life.
Yeah.
And the music is part of that.
When you weren't covering the news, what did you do with your downtime? Did you meet local musicians or go to clubs? Because I know that you're a musician yourself.
I could play. I used to play the drums when I was 17 so badly that my parents threw a blanket over the drum kit. That's how bad I was. So I'm definitely not a musician. Music came into the downtime, no question. And there was a little suburb of Johannesburg called Melville, which was essentially just a crossroads with some rather trendy bars. And the windows would open onto the street, and you'd park, and a guy would ask for money to keep your car safe and all that. And you'd go in, and I remember going in one day and just sitting in this bar, and I didn't know what I was going to watch, and this fellow took to the piano, and his name was Moses Molelekwa, and he just played just incredible, I suppose, South African jazz or some kind of fusion of jazz and township music. And I remember thinking, this is amazing. I've come into this tiny bar, there's only about 20 of us here, 10 of them aren't even listening, and this is world-class music. I love this track because I'm sitting in the bar watching this guy play his beautiful piano, but now I'm sitting opposite you, Colin. I'm thinking, this is a Radiohead beat in the background. But the thing about Moses Molelekwa, and he's not world famous, or he's probably not even South African famous. He had a couple of CDs. I got them both. I thought, I'm going to follow this guy. And then one day I saw online that he'd hanged himself, and I thought, it's hard living in that country. It's a hard life, and there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of tragedy, and maybe the music comes out of that. That's why Liverpool had the Beatles, because it rained, and that's why Hawaii will never produce anyone.
So what kind of big musical events did you attend when you were there?
Well, journalists are fundamentally just on the news, doing news. So we don't, when we get a bit of music in our lives, we get really excited. Yeah. For me, Johnny Radio 2 was a complete joy for that very reason. But, there's one moment, Colin, which I will always remember. And it's the moment that made me think, I love this, but I don't really understand it. And it was 1999, a huge field in Pretoria. It was the inauguration of Thabo Mbeki, who was the president, the ANC president, who followed Nelson Mandela, who, of course, only did one term. Yeah. So he'd stepped down. It was a big ceremony, and then there was some music being played. And I was standing, and I suddenly was aware the crowd were moving to my right. And I looked to my right, and I could see 16 to 20, I would say, grannies, and they were in a perfect grid, so say 5 by 4, 4 deep, 5 wide, and they were doing this dance where they go 2 steps forwards all together, 2 steps back, 2 steps left, 2 steps right, 2 steps back, to this music, and they were moving their elbows, and it was honestly, it was as brilliantly synchronized as the best pop video you've ever seen, and they were all over 65. And I remember thinking that, I was remembering my granny was 65, her hair was grey, and she used to do the weeding. You know, she would never have done that. And I thought, yeah.
You weren't tempted to join in?
I was, well, of course I was. Yeah. My heart was and my mind wasn't. I thought, I've got a tape recorder, I'm on the job here, I've got to actually stay on the story. But I just thought, this is South African music I'm watching. It's in everybody's cell, whatever age you are, all of your life.
A lot of the music was recorded in South Africa, was funded mainly by, wealthier people who tended to be white, but they didn't actually have anything to do with the creative input of the music. And then the master tapes were shipped up to England, and the vinyl was pressed in Middlesex and Hayes, and then the vinyl was sent back down to South Africa. And one of the great record shop Stearns in London, it started up because they took some of the vinyl that was going to go back down to South Africa and sold it to expats and people who were into the music back in London. It's
a terrible story, that, Colin, because I think you can see the only person who's not making any money out of that process is the actual musician.
That's right, yeah.
And that was the story in the townships, and there was a kind of music called Mbakanga, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but essentially you'll know all about. But it came about, I think, partly as a result that they kept all these different communities of disenfranchised South Africans separate.
That's right.
So, and they then, printed their records and sold them and made the money, and the townships, the musicians themselves never saw the money. It's a hard life there, no question about it. And actually, one of the songs that I really love to listen to is by this guy, Condri Zukubu, and it's called Skorokoro, and it's about Skorokoro is what you call your car when it basically is a mangled heap, and he's having trouble starting his car, and to me it just sums up the township. Nothing really works properly.
So Jeremy, thank you very much for sharing some of your memories of time in South Africa and your music in South Africa too, and this is Skorokoro by Condri Zukubu. That was another of my favourite tracks by the artist Majaku Bomba. You're listening to Six Music with the sounds of South Africa, and I'd just like to thank Jeremy for coming in and sharing some of his favourite musical memories from when he was working in South Africa. I'm Colin Greenwood from the band Radiohead, and coming up next is Wazani Mahipi by the Mahatala Queens. This track is a great garage groove. I love this one. I think the rough translation of the title is something like the hippies are coming to Soweto, and it's meant to be calling out to the kids of the time for forsaking their parents' values. That was the Mahatala Queens. Mam Shanyana by the Afro jazz group Batsumi released their debut record in 1974. It's been reissued since, and you can pick it up on Matsuli Music. I played it on my show last week, and it's more than good enough to play again. According to the sleeve notes of the record, Batsumi is a hunting party, and it says, Batsumi, yes, Batsumi. You want to know perhaps what this Batsumi is all about? Literally, this name explains a group of people out on hunting, in short, hunters. In case you're thinking of people hunting for animals, this is not the case. It is people hunting for ideas, music, sounds, art, creativity, and so on. Here it is, Batsumi with Mam Shanyana. Welcome back, and that was Township Funk by DJ Mujava. That was put out over in the UK a couple of years ago by Warp Records, and you can hear why. It's got all my favourite stripped-down sounds that I loved in all those early Detroit records made by people like Derek May, Ron Atkins, and of course it reminds me of those early Warp tracks like Tricky Disco. This next band formed in 1968 as high school students from Soweto, and they made their album Harare after a stonking tour of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, in 1974. The album cover has cool studio shots of the band, and the music has that mix of garage, soul, funk that I just love. The band changed their name to Harare after the album went double gold, and fans started calling them after their album title. But when they recorded and released this next track, they were called The Beaters. That was The Beaters, one of my favourite groups, with their track Tibo Kamo, playing a song that lots of other artists seem to have recovered. I've no idea which is the original, but this is the one that I've come to love. It's been so much fun finding brilliant South African artists. Gideon Co actually played J.K. Manyangani and the Shingwedzi Sisters before, but I love this tune, Kubani, so much that it just needs playing again. It's another top garage cut from the Strut Records compilation, Next Stop, Soweto Volume 2. That was Kubani by J.K. Mayangani and the Shingwedzi Sisters. Let's spend some Sunday service time worshipping at the altar of Miriam Makeba now. She performed in her own right in South Africa, and we'll play some of her solo work in a moment. But I love this next tune she did with the Manhattan Brothers. This is Tula de Ville. We just heard Dimbone Dluka by Miriam Makeba and the Skylarks, recorded in the winter of 1958. And before that, I played a tune she did with the Manhattan Brothers, Tula de Ville. Miriam Makeba was one of South Africa's true singing stars, despite spending many years out of the country in exile. She lived countless lives in as many countries, and I've been thrilled to discover her music. A Grammy winner, she was also affectionately known as Mama Africa. She campaigned against apartheid and lost her passport and then her citizenship and right to return all between 1960 and 1963. She only went back in 1990. In between, she had marriages with Hugh Masekela as well as the Black Panther, Stokely Carmichael. And she also played at the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire between Ali and Foreman. She was made honorary citizen of 10 countries and lived as far afield as Guinea and Belgium. She died in 2008 of a heart attack whilst performing at an anti-mafia gig in Italy. My favourite compilation is called South Africa Skylark, and it covers all her music, from her debuts with the Manhattan Brothers in the 50s through to this fantastic acid soul track, Quit It.
You take drugs to psych your mind. Yeah.
That's the last of our 3 tracks from Miriam Makeba, the excellent Quit It. Thank you for listening. This is Colin Greenwood from Radiohead, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to the South African music on 6 as much as I have. This last track is by the band Malombo from their 1976 album Pele Pele, and it's called Père Frère. Tom Robinson is coming up after this.